as long as you take responsibility and you're trying to improve yourself, that's the biggest thing. I'll leave you with this quote, and that is, a formal education will earn you a living. Self-education will earn you a fortune.
Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Sean Morgan, a full-time teacher. That's right, I teach every day just like you, and personal financial coach. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you're a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life. The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. I'm super excited to have Matt Kimbell on the show today. Matt has been an elementary school teacher for 13 years, a chief negotiator for the union and a union president, and he's just super interested in finance, and we're here to talk about the mindsets that teachers have when it comes to our finances and just exploring that whole topic. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Matt, I just want to dive right in, and you've been teaching elementary school for 13 years. Can you tell me about how you got into education, your journey in education, and then pivot that into how you got interested into personal finance?
Sure. So I graduated with an undergraduate from Rutgers, Newark in 2007 in criminal justice. And I started exploring some avenues related to criminal justice. And probably the most obvious that comes to mind for people is police officer. And I started talking to police officers, just getting kind of the gist of what life was like. And I should also mention I had been playing baseball through college as well. And it seemed as I was approaching the end of my college career, I had an opportunity. I was offered a contract to play independent baseball at the next level. And so obviously I took that. And then once that came to an end, I still had the criminal justice degree, but it was, maybe a year or so passed, and I realized that might have not been the best route for me. And I ended up going back into coaching pretty much full time for baseball. I returned to the school where I trained most of my life. And when I was there, I loved it. It was fantastic. Unfortunately, there's no opportunity for growth. And I was like, okay, I love working with the kids, younger kids, soak up everything like sponges, high school kids. They're great to interact with. It's like, how do I make this into something I really enjoy? And so a lot of the other coaches there actually became teachers for the same reasons, that I just mentioned. And so I went back, I received my master's of arts in teaching K-6, got a job probably about 2 years after I graduated that. I was a teaching assistant, then became a full-time teacher. And then in 2017, that's when I became chief negotiator. And then in 2021, I became union president for my district. How did I get into personal finances? So I had invested in 2012 when I first started teaching with an insurance company. And so the guy who pitched me happened to be somebody I worked with at the baseball school at the time. And so, he came in and I got the script read to me, and they make a connection with you and you feel good about it. And it's just like you set it and forget it. That's what they tell you all the time in finances. But you better know how to set it before you forget it, because you'll find yourself in a world of trouble afterwards. And I took a loan out against my 403B, and that was to go back to school so I could earn my administrative degree. And so I finished that up in like a year. But while I was doing that, I started reading about this insurance company and how, it wasn't as great as everybody made it out to be, and more stories were coming out. And so I decided to pull my money out of that. And in the middle of that, I had in August of 23 last year, I had an opportunity to attend a dinner. And this was one of those life altering moments. I sat down with this man named Ronnie, tremendous person, successful real estate investor. From what I could tell, based on what he was talking about, it sounded like he got into real estate in 2008. So he was getting into things when they were at rock bottom. So when everybody else was running the other way, Ronnie was heading into the fire, and he just started snatching up houses. His dad's in construction. He started purchasing homes. And so him and I went back and forth for a couple hours, and we were talking about podcasts we listened to and then books. And Ronnie said to me, "Hey, did you ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Start with that book." And I go for a walk almost every morning, and I found it on YouTube. There was the audiobook. It was read not by AI, thank gosh. It was easy to listen to. And I have to tell you, Sean, I read that, and then it turned into somehow Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover ended up after that. And so now here's two very conflicting ideas when it comes to money management. And I think they're two great pillars to any strong financial foundation. You have somebody who's teaching you how to have passive income, leveraging debt, which that takes years and years before you can get there. But then you have Dave Ramsey, who's more like you need a budget. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And it's been a rabbit hole since. I can't stop learning about it. I love talking about it. I educate my colleagues about it. And it's interesting when you talk to them what their beliefs are about finances. And I have one colleague. They Unfortunately they have a habit of buying high and selling low. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And when you get so far into it, you're like, well, it seems obvious, but it feels good to help other people. It's not beyond them at all. And they deserve to have that financial education so they can feel secure in their future.
Yeah, absolutely. The number of people who got interested in finance after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad is staggering. I think that of the last, 50 years or whenever that book came out, and it can't be more than 50 years ago, but like it's going to be one of the most influential books just because so many people have had their mind changed by that book. So it is definitely a one to read. If you have not read Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's not going to tell you how to do pretty much anything, but it will tell
Yeah.
you the mindset behind thinking richer, which is, I think, what
Yes.
really makes a big difference.
Yep.
So we're here to talk about this mindset piece, which I think, Rich Dad Poor Dad is a great segue into that. What are some common, beliefs that teachers seem to have that make the mindset so difficult?
Sure. I jotted down a whole bunch of things. You're going to see me peer off here and take a look. I think first and foremost, and this might sting some people, and that is teachers are not paid enough. I believe that's a gray area. I believe, in the area that I happen to live in, teachers are paid fairly well. There's been improvements with that, but just to stick to your question, teachers aren't paid enough. If you manage your money the right way, I believe that teachers are paid enough. You just have to know where every dollar is going, so to speak. Um, Finances are not for them. People say they hear the word finance. I think they picture, somebody in the white shirt, a tie, nice suit, looking at computers and, shaking hands, signing big contracts. And they're like, oh, no, no, that's not me. I think that's another one. They also think that the stock market is gambling for the rich. And so, we're not too far removed from the Great Depression. When you think about it, we're still under the millennial mark for that. And so, like our grandparents hoarded a lot of things, and we're taught that when you gather things, that's value. Things are looked at as assets, and when you get that mindset, things are assets or liabilities. When you start looking at everything in that regard, you start really restricting sort of yourself to what's necessary, right? So I think there's another common myth there is the more that I have, the better it is. When you learn to let go of things, you definitely have a richer mindset. And with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, especially when you have an abundance mindset, there's the scarcity and there's the abundance mindset. The abundance mindset is what's going to propel you ahead. When you look at hoarding things and holding on to things, that's what holds you back. So I believe that's another myth as well. Um, Wanting money is greedy. I think as teachers, we're taught that we need to be in service of others, and that means that you take a vow of poverty when you become a teacher. That could not be further from the truth. Wanting money is not greedy. How you what you do with it afterwards maybe determines you being greedy or not. But I've learned through all of the research, the ultimate goal of accumulating wealth is to be able to share that wealth. Right. And so for me, that's how I see that. When I can get to that financial independence standpoint where within my budget, I'm allotting so much to whatever charity it is or just helping people in general, that's a good thing. So wanting money is that's okay. Um, Something else is Social Security will take care of me. Fidelity just released an article, I think like a week and a half ago, talking about the depletion of Social Security. And so teachers work until they're 65 and then, then they retire. And all they've ever known is that, yes, that'll be there, at the end. I'm trying to live my life like it won't be. And I'm banking on the economy to take me into and then through my retirement. You don't have to live paycheck to paycheck if you understand how investing works, and it's a lot simpler than you think. And that's another myth. It's complicated. It's not. You will be far better off in the future. Um, and I think the last thing I would say is that you have to exchange your time for money. Yes, but I think most teachers see it as like, I need to tutor, which means I need to be with somebody for an hour and then I need to be paid for that, as opposed to making products or creating a service and then having a passive form of income. But you are still exchanging time for money. The nice thing is it's on your time. When you have, an hour to yourself and maybe you're working on a podcast or you're writing a book, you can still exchange that time for money later on. So you don't have to give up your time personally in order to have another source of revenue. And that's the nice thing about investing. Everybody has access to it. It's just a matter of getting into it in a responsible way.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, so wow, nice list. Let's just talk through each of these,
Okay.
at a time. And that'll probably take our whole time together because these are all amazing, and I really love these ideas. My first one, I harp on this too. The idea that teachers are not paid enough is not necessarily true. Now, when I think about this, I'm like, first year teacher, probably not paid enough because like we're getting like $35,000 a year, and then you have the insurance coming out of that and things like that, and a pension coming out of it. It's pretty low for the like comparing to the amount of education that went into it, right? That's what makes it.
Mhm.
If someone who doesn't have an education and doesn't have a business can go and get a couple months of on-the-job training and make about the same money as a teacher does in a year, that's where I'm
Yeah.
like, that's problematic. But the ability to grow in those jobs that those people are having is not the same as teachers who dependably step up and can get additional education to step up. So that's
Yep.
my thought on that. But if you're like a first year teacher and you're single and you are living with a roommate, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to make really good financial moves with the money that you're making, right? It's just
Yes.
when you're someone like me who decided to get married and have a kid my very first year of teaching, and now I'm supporting my wife who's staying at home with my son and my son on my 1 year, year one step, no education salary, that gets a little tight, but that was a
Yep.
personal decision on my part, right? So I can't complain and say, well, they're not paying me enough. Well, I made decisions that made it so it was tighter, right? And just thinking through that and saying like, this amount of money I'm making is not meeting my needs, should not be okay, therefore it's their fault, right? It should be what can I do to change that? So
Mhm.
the place where you are coming from is I am in control of my finances. You are not
Yes.
saying it's, the taxpayer needs to pay me more. It's okay, this is how much they're paying me for the job that I chose to have. Can
Yep.
I get more education? Can I work a side hustle? Can I lower my expenses? Whatever it is, you can control where your money's going and where it's coming from beyond
Yep.
just your single paycheck. And that is what you have to do. I had to get trained as a notary and then drive 2 hours over the mountains of Colorado in the snow
Hmm.
to do one job and come back. But doing that, because notaries get paid, pretty well for different loan packages that they do,
Okay.
I was able to supplement my income and survive. But if I said
Yep.
they just don't pay me enough, I would have just gone helplessly into debt at that time instead of
Mhm.
being able to cover my expenses. So you have to take control of it yourself instead of blaming somebody else. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're responsible for your own life. It's black and white to me. We all make decisions, and we learn sort of like trial by fire. So, what I would tell people, I heard this piece of advice, and I think it's tremendous, right? When you come out of college and you get a job, and like you said, you have a roommate in your 20s, you have one focus, and that is you need to upskill, and you need to upskill like crazy. People graduate college like finally I get a job and I'm going to be paid, I'll be a paycheck and like steady income. Your education never stops, and especially in your 20s, you still know what it is to learn, right? And so when you come out, I don't care if you're a teacher, an electrician, whatever it is, your job is to upskill and get really, really, really honed in at becoming tremendous at your job. You want to become valuable. Teachers say I'm not paid enough, especially in like year one. You are either going to become an asset to your district, and again, or you're going to be a liability. And the district is certainly not going to pay you more when they don't know what's in store with you. They don't know what you bring to the table. All they see is a resume. They see we graduated from college. And so, you get paid a little bit until you prove your worth. My advice to anybody, again, it doesn't matter what you do, is in your 20s, upskill. And for school teachers, make sure you check with your union president to see if your school will pay for your education. Ours does. They cover up to $1,500 a year in credits. They have to approve it. There's a little bit of a process. But I've spread that word to so many people. In fact, in like 2000, I want to say it was like 2019, I was like, I caught fire with that. And then I started spreading the word about the website I was using because it was passed down to me from the speech teacher in our school. And all of a sudden, the language in the contract changed, and they were no longer accepting that website. They claimed third party or whatever. But the point is, upskill in your 20s and your 30s, climb the corporate ladder. That's the tricky part about teaching. There's not really a ladder to climb. There's different positions. You can become an administrator, you can oversee curriculum, maybe become supervisory or whatever, but it's kind of limited there at that point. You get into superintendent, you're climbing the ladder kind of, but in your 30s, climb the ladder and climb it aggressively. And then in your 40s, you want to make sure that you are investing heavily. You have all this income coming in. And if you start investing early in your 20s and you do it in a safe, responsible way, your 40s, you really could find yourself on sort of a fire path. And for those that don't know, that's financial independence, retire early. Uh, that's the goal. That's what we're all trying to do, is we're trying to buy back our time so that we can do things when we want to do them, how we want to do them. And so to go all the way back to your question, yeah, you are responsible for your own decisions. If you're unhappy with things, then you have to make a change. I went the administrative route. I'm currently looking for a job. It's tough though, because every other teacher realizes they can't get out of education so easy. And they thought that they wanted a remote job. And for those that are listening, a remote job is not what it's cracked up to be. I think there's this false understanding or belief that you are on your time and you can do things when you want. And as long as you hit your numbers and complete your task for the day, all is well. I know very, very successful people that are remote, that are on their computers a whole lot. They don't really get much of a break. But that's like true remote work. So if you are trying to get out of education, please just be aware of what you are stepping into. That's really important, because I've seen also a lot of stories of people trying to get back in education because the remote work wasn't for them or corporate. As long as you take responsibility and you're trying to improve yourself, that's the biggest thing. And I'll leave you with this quote, and that is, a formal education will earn you a living. Self-education will earn you a fortune.
I love that. That's fantastic. And, you talked about, growing in education, like, boosting your income in education. I'm a big proponent of building a business on the side for teachers because, as much as we complain about, I have so much I need to do during the summer, that's your time, right? And if you can work on a business during that time, instead of doing all the other things that we're claiming that we're doing, I'm telling you right now, you are not spending the entire summer working on lesson plans. And if you are, stop it. Okay. They are not paying you for your time during the summer. They are not. Even though you are getting a paycheck most likely over the summer, they've just split up your paycheck over a 10-month contract over 12 months.
Yeah.
That time over the summer is your time. If you are building lesson plans without getting compensated for it, don't. Okay, I know that that might hurt and you want to be there for your students, but if the way that you are running your classroom is making it so that way you have to work hours upon hours upon hours outside of your classroom to make that class work, then something has to change because that is going free money is what you're doing. You're just giving free time to this district, and that is not how you're going to take control of your own life. So building a business of some kind, even if it's really small. I mean, like you can do something simple like driving for Uber, but that's just not going to grow and scale, right? But if you're going to start tutoring, right? There are ways that you can tutor as a business owner and make really good money, or you can
Yep.
be a tutor for a company and make $11 an hour. Okay. Uh,
Yep.
like what do you want? Building your own business is what's going to have the better growth effect for you. And it's just going to give you that control over your money and still allow you to stay in the classroom because you can work on a business on your own time. You don't have to, be there at a certain time and certain hours. And they'll be like, well, if you can't work here on, Thursday at noon, too bad, we're not going to hire you, right? You can do
Mhm.
whatever you want, whenever you want when you're a business owner. So just keep that in mind as a great opportunity for taking control of your finances.
To that point too, Sean, we have we have an educational system that is predicated upon the approval of an adult, and they are going to determine your grade. And I can't tell you how many times my students come to me and they learn real fast, not to anymore. Is this good? Right? Do you like this? And I always turn it back and I say, do you like it? Do you think it's good? And most of the time they're young, so they're fun. They're like, yeah, I do. I'm like, well, then that's what matters. I'm like, the real question is like, do you feel like you worked as hard as you can? Most of them they'll answer yes, even though I'm like, no, they probably could have done better. But a few times students are like, no. I'm like, all right, so go back and let's put in a little bit more effort. But I try to teach students to take agency. And so to your point, teachers looking for other jobs, again, they're looking and they're, in my opinion, they're going about it the wrong way. They're wanting somebody else to see their value and tell them what they're worth. And opening up your own business, I had a little bit of a landscaping business. I just worked for myself, owner operator. I had a little trailer I bought right during the pandemic, and I was just hauling equipment around, cleaning gutters, hauling away leaves, power washing. I love being outdoors, so it was nice. I was on my time, and at the moment, I didn't realize all the write ups I could have had. I purchased so much equipment. I look back, I'm like, ugh. But yes, starting a business, I also did tutoring. I hooked up with a family, did very well there. That came to an end. And then, people were like, can you give baseball lessons? So I started doing that. So it's like a jack of all trades sort of thing. But working for yourself is very liberating. And without going into it, there's a lot of tax advantages as well. Write-offs, something doesn't pan out, you're squared up. But I wholly support what you're saying. If you can start a business, I recommend the book. I think it's called The $100 Startup. I forget who wrote it. But if you go on AI and you tell it to give you the template for the $100 startup, when I compared it and I did it, it was missing a few questions. Do that and then print out like 5 or 10 sheets, fill it out with different ideas and see which ones are going to stick. I love the idea of starting your own business, working for yourself, and scaling that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I have a whole episode where I talked to Erica and Terry about the tax advantages of running your own business and including your child in that business as well. So
Mhm.
I'll link to that in the show notes, which are at teachyourmoneyshow.com/podcast. You can find the show notes for all of the episodes of this show, or you can go down in the description of your podcast player and find the link to the show notes page there. Just one more thing before we move on to the next topic is, I was out walking my dog this morning and looking at all of these houses just filled with Christmas decorations, right? And I'm looking at these houses and I was like, you know what? These people are not going to take these down for like a month because they don't want to. I have some time right now, another week. What if I went door to door and said, you know, how much would you pay me to box up your Christmas decorations? Right? I mean, like go through like a nice neighborhood, or like and just knock on their doors and saying like, "Hey, I have a Christmas decoration takedown business. Love to take down your Christmas decorations. That's going to take $0 for you to get started. And I guarantee you some of these nice neighborhoods that have their houses just like full of Christmas decorations are going to pay you good money to box up their Christmas decorations for them. So, like, I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying there are opportunities to make money everywhere if you really want to do it. So,
That's the abundance mindset we talked about before. Absolutely. I love that. That's just a true hustle mentality of like where else can I, bring in a few extra dollars. And again, on your time, which is fantastic. I love that. And I go for a walk every day too now. So now you got me looking around my own neighborhood starting tomorrow. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna hit up this house, this house, this. That's fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, now let's move on to the next one, which you said the idea that finances is not for them. It's too complicated to handle finances as a teacher. So it's not for me. I'm gonna hand that to the guy with the free donuts in the lunchroom or whatever you're gonna do. Like, what do you mean by this? Let's go deeper.
Uh, yeah, I think just the word finances comes with this whole connotation. And I mentioned it before, a guy in a white shirt with a nice tie, nice suit. He's got like the $200 haircut, polished shoes, and he or she starts throwing all this jargon at you. Vivian too. I don't know if you know who she is. She's got her own social media platform. It's called Your Rich BFF, and she wrote a book called Rich AF. And she refers to finances as being pale, male, and stale. And I read that and I just laughed to myself because I think all of us had trouble placing our finger on why finances are the way they are. And when I read that line, I said, wow, I was like, that's it right there. Um, and so what happens is when you talk about finances with people, it's uncomfortable, right? And so you kind of like limit yourself to what you want to divulge. And then when you actually talk to a financial person, they throw around this jargon that, in my opinion, it's just to make you feel like you couldn't possibly understand finances. And that's what happened when I got pulled into a retirement account 12 years ago, talking about annuities, brokerages, all things I just was not privy to. I just didn't have any financial education. And so they make it feel like you need me, right? Like I'm in your corner, I have your best interest. But when you peel back all the layers, all it comes down to is them thinking, how can I make money off of you? Right. And so they tell you something along the lines of like, listen, for all of this, it's so complicated. For all of this, I charge like a 1% fee, but they don't tell you about the hidden fees of trades that they're going to make, the expense ratios. Maybe their products are not the best products, right? But you don't know any better. You know education. I don't know a lot of educators that went into finance, came out and became educators, right? I think it's fascinating that you have what seems to be a lot of educators now taking more of an interest in their finances, right? And I'm a quote guy, so just bear with me on that. Another thing, somebody just asked this person, I don't even know who the guy was. They said, "What's the biggest myth you were told growing up?" Um, and the person responded with, it was something along the lines of like, it's really complicated. And they're like, what? And they're like, everything. It's really complicated. And I thought to myself, yeah, I can understand where he's going with this because he followed it up with, it's as complicated or as simple as you want to make it. And finances are very simple. When you understand how to budget and understand what your four walls are, right? Then you can have a solid look at, okay, here's what's coming in, here's what's going out, here's what's left over, and then it comes down to, do I have too much money at the end of the month, or do I have too much month at the end of the money, right? And when you take a hard look at your spending habits and you see where things are going, you tighten your belt a whole lot more, and you're like, okay, that's going to stop, that's going to stop, that's going to stop, right? It is a very simple process. Now, I will tell you, the first time I made a budget, I spent 12 hours in front of a computer because I did everything that Ramsey recommended. I printed out, the last 3 months of my credit card statement, the last 3 months of my checking statement. I highlighted things. I was making notes, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I was like, all right, so the party's coming to an end now. And I really, it just opened my eyes. And just to kind of fast forward the conversation, and using AI at the time too to help me budget, I had found an additional $14,000 within a year, which all went to investing, opening up a Roth IRA, um, setting it to a fund that tracks the S&P 500. So to me, finances are as complicated or as simple as you want to make them. Life is as complicated or as simple as you want to make it. I'm a black and white person. I try to take the emotion out of it, and I just stick with what looks like and sounds like common sense, and that's just applicable across everything to me.
Yeah, so two things on that. I love this. So one of my favorite quotes, since we're going with quotes right now, is from Dave Ramsey. I don't follow Dave Ramsey on a lot of things, but my favorite thing he ever said was, the first time you make a budget, you're gonna suck. And I think that is that's very true. Like, it's not going to go well the first time, but like, remember the first lesson you taught as a teacher? Was that really your best lesson? No, it wasn't, right? That first lesson plan just did not go the way it was supposed to. You had to learn and get experience. And that's what budgeting is like. People say, oh, I did a budget, it didn't work. And they freak out. But like, you should expect to suck the first time you do something. And then you get better and better. And then you eventually find $14,000 in there that you can invest instead, right? That's the beauty of just iterating and practicing. And then the other thing you were talking about is this idea that we already said in the previous discussion about continue to learn, right? You need to continue to learn because that's the only way you're going to get better, right? And anything is learnable. We're teachers. We know this. Anything is learnable. I could go and learn how to put together an entire car engine if I wanted to. I'm not going to right now, but I could. And it's learnable as possible, especially out there on, we have YouTube that just shows you how to do everything. You have, you just libraries full of information per website out there. Like, there's just so much that we can find if we wanted to learn. And it's just getting more and more accessible today. So just remember, if you are feeling overwhelmed by finances, uh, just keep learning, right? Just keep listening, keep reading. And as you keep going, as you keep that ball rolling, you'll realize that it's not as complicated as you think, right? I was talking to Carl Fish, who's the writer of the Too Long Didn't Read Pension Systems series, and I'll link to the episode with that. But he was saying that he has a single sentence that summarizes everything you need to know about finance. And I don't remember what it was, and it was like, a compound complex sentence, but it still was a single sentence that just boiled down, the basics of, earn more, spend less, invest the difference, where to invest it if you wanted to make, simple long-term investments that are going to grow over time. Like, it is very, very easy to wrap your mind around everything you need to know if you want to be rich. So there is not a lot you have to know to be well off in finance.
Agreed. Absolutely.
And sorry, so another quick story. This is one of my favorite stories. It's totally apocryphal. Like, I looked it up once and it wasn't exactly this way, but I still like the story anyway. So there's a story about the cholera and how cholera was, killing a bunch of people back in the 1800s. And they didn't know where it was coming from. And this doctor comes along and he removes the pump from a well. That's where all of the cases seem to be. And when people stopped getting water from that well, cholera cases just dropped. And that's how he discovered that cholera was in the water. And if you boiled the water, the cholera died, and you could drink the water and you wouldn't get cholera. And the story goes that, a year later, he died from drinking unboiled water because he got cholera. And the idea here is like, he knew what to do, but he didn't. Other people that he told boiled their water and they didn't die, right? So it's not about the knowledge necessarily. It's just about taking action. And if you can take small, simple actions, just boiling the water to avoid cholera, just, spending a little bit less of your money and investing it in a low cost index fund, you're going to be so farther along than anybody else by just doing the simple thing and not even learning about all of the different nuances with taxes and insurances and these other things. Like, you don't have to do all of the deep work that, people like me are doing because I just really like it. You can just do the basics and let it ride. As long as, like you said, you set it up right, then forget it, you'll be fine. So that's really what it comes down to.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, the idea of applying, and that's a mental thing too, Sean. That's people need to understand that. I go for walks sometimes 4:30 in the morning. I'm in New Jersey. It's 11 degrees, and those days they suck. I don't look forward to it. I dress accordingly. I'm not out there in t-shirt and shorts and like punishing myself, but I have to go out and I walk, and I enjoy that solace, that time. To your point though, you have to apply things, but in order to apply it consistently, there has to be discipline there. And if you don't have the mental discipline for it, it's that much harder. And without going down a rabbit hole, we are a consumer society. The minute you step out of your door and you drive somewhere, within 2 minutes, I think for almost anybody, there is a place or someone ready to sell you something. And unless you see, what the value is in it and you look at things a little bit differently, you'll get duped a whole lot more than you won't. And it's important that you exercise that muscle. You exercise your no muscle appropriately, and you exercise your yes muscle appropriately. So
Awesome. So the next one you said is that stock market is gambling. I feel like this just comes down to the understanding finance, realizing it's not complicated and figuring it out. Is there anything else you wanted to add about this idea that, the myth that the stock market is gambling?
So what I would tell anybody who's looking to invest, right, is, and you just mentioned this phrase just a minute ago, is getting into what's called a low cost index fund. And for those that is the first time hearing this, stocks, I think most of us understand it's one company you're investing in. And we don't know how those companies are going to pan out. And some of them do great, some of them do poorly, some of them go up, then down, then up a little more. It's a roller coaster ride, right? And that's one company. But if you have something like a fund, low cost index fund, think of it as like a basket of stocks, right? And so your money is dispersed evenly amongst all of them. And if one stock does really well, it kind of drags the rest of the stocks with it. If one stock does bad, though, the rest of the stocks don't necessarily come down with it. When you have a fund, it stabilizes it. For those that are listening that are educators, think of it as like most of your classroom is well behaved. If you have one kid, though, if you only have just one kid that's kind of causing a problem, he's not going to be able to drag the whole classroom down, right? Like that's important. It takes a whole lot of them, but that diversifies. It diversifies your investments, and that's what you're trying to do. If you want a conservative way to get into the stock market, having that low cost index fund is important. Now, I will say I've seen enough portfolios of very wealthy people. You do have to invest in single stocks, right? But that doesn't mean A, you're looking for the cheapest stock, right? It doesn't mean B, that you have to do what everybody else is doing necessarily. But if you're into finances a little bit, and you want to take some time to research some companies, and if you're not sure, you go with like the big five. You go with, right now it looks like to be Tesla, Google, Amazon, Apple, whatever it is. They seem to have promising futures, right? um, and so you can go that route. But to your point, just being an observer of the world, this is, and I love this. I truly like, I love this idea where you're walking around and you're like, I wonder how much they would pay me to box that stuff for them for the winter. That's awesome. um, it's applicable here in terms of just being an observer of the world, right? Like you look at people walking around with Starbucks in their hand. That company's going to be pretty steady for the foreseeable future, right? There's really no competition. It's them and Dunkin' Donuts. I am by no means a coffee connoisseur, right? I don't know what the coffee sommelier would be called. But like I taste the difference between Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. I can see why people are paying a little bit more for Starbucks. Um, but if you wanted to do some single stock picking, just through a little bit of research, you add that to an investment portfolio. And then again, you kind of set it and forget it. Unless you see your company like Starbucks in the news for something awful, you just kind of leave it alone and let them just, help carry your portfolio a little bit. But again, stock market it's not gambling. There's a difference between gambling and investing. And I was at a Christmas party yesterday and I was talking to this kid. He's like 23 years old. He actually helped his father blow up on social media because he saw this sort of avenue with how to, I guess, garner a little bit more attention for his dad's business. Um, but he was talking to me, he asked me, he goes, so what's your take on investing with like meme coins? I was like, I don't touch that with, I won't touch that with the 10-foot pole, man. I was like, if you want to talk true investing and building true wealth, I go, that takes time. It's like, I'll talk to you about like stock picking. Um, there's risk involved, yes, with investing, but you can minimize that depending on what it is you decide to invest in. But everything is risk. It's just a matter of how much risk are you willing to take on. You got to know your tolerance level too. I tell people like go from a 1 to a 4. 4 is like I can handle a whole lot of risk. 1 is I'm a lot more conservative. When you're young, if you're a young educator listening, be aggressive. You can take a little bit more risk on when you put a portfolio together, and I've helped educators do that. You can be aggressive because you can stomach the volatility. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, but ultimately the S&P typically climbs over the long term. Be aggressive with it early on. That's investing. But the day traders, I love being on like the Wall Street Bets platform. I love the discussions on there. Guys, people have the funniest ideas about what investing is, and it's not what they're doing, right? They're day trading. That's a completely different animal. But again, things are as simple or as complicated as you want to make them. But if you are listening right now, and you are like, where do I even begin? Just understand the stock market approach the right way is a very good investment as long as it's done, like I said, the right way, appropriately, conservatively. And then if you get into it like a little bit more like I do, it sounds like you do as well, you start to build a bit of a portfolio for yourself. And you could take yourself well into retirement before you actually thought that you would retire.
Yeah. So I just want to emphasize the idea that if you're going to be picking stocks, it's first of all for the long term, right? It's not day trading. Second of all, it is with education. You do not pick things at random or because your Uncle Jerry told you can't lose, right? If you are not willing to get the education to pick stocks, don't. All right. The index fund is going to be a not grow as much, right? But it's going to grow and it's going to be all you need to get to retirement over a long period of time, right? If you don't have that long period of time, you're going to have to find some other ways to invest. But just keep in mind that you have to have the education piece. And one way to get the education piece is I just had an episode with Canwell Sarai. He's a dividend investor. He has 12 rules for picking a dividend stock, but that's a great place to start for you to look into as just like what are some people thinking through and all the work that goes into picking a good stock, because he picks individual stocks, but man, he really rakes them over the coals to make sure that they are a good stock to pick. So don't just throw a dart at the dartboard, right? That's what really matters, is having that education. Wow, this has been a fun conversation, and we are only halfway through the list that Matt presented to us of the mindsets that teachers have that we are trying to, overcome. I'm going to bring Matt back, and we're going to finish this conversation with a part 2. So be looking out for that next week as we are going to finish up talking about abundance versus scarcity mindset. Wanting money is greedy, and why that's not the case. Your Social Security or maybe even your pension will take care of you versus investing for the long term and then having to exchange your time for money, and trying to understand these various mindset shifts that teachers can have to help them be wealthy. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming on. Look forward to another great conversation with you.
Great. Thank you for having me, Sean. I really appreciate it.
Wow, that was a great conversation with Matt. I'm going to do the cliff notes for parts 1 and 2 at the end of part 2. So just stay tuned for that. But I just wanted to make sure that you caught how mind-blowing this mindset shift thing that Matt's talking about is. Just being able to take control of where you are, having your education driving you towards continually getting better at your finances, and just realizing that there are many ways that teachers can become wealthy is so important, because once you believe it, you can achieve it. Now, we talked about a lot of resources, a lot of books, a lot of episodes. So remember, if you want to get those episodes, you can go to the show notes at teachermoneyshow.com/podcast, or you can go down to the description underneath in your podcast player and find the direct link to this exact show notes page. Now, remember, as a teacher, You're already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up. Are you worried you won't have enough money to retire? Or maybe you just don't know how you're going to get out of all of this debt. Whatever your situation is, I can help you. Go to teachermoneyshow.com/guest and fill out the form there. And you can come on the show for free coaching, or we can meet one-on-one to discuss your needs. I look forward to talking to you.